Hello, dear friends. Here we are. This is the Medium's Harvest by Emmanuel through Xavier. We're empowering ourselves to another level of understanding mediumship, mediums, the practice, and the benefits of a well-educated mediumship. The Medium's Harvest was written by Emmanuel through the medium Xavier in 1960. In 90 meetings, we've come to unfold a new understanding of the Medium's book. The Medium's book is, without a doubt, the manual for mediumship. Whomever wants to practice mediumship or understand mediumship needs to read that book first. And then later, other books that unfold the continuation, because Spiritism is a science. And as any science, it evolves, it progresses, it accumulates knowledge. Inevitably, we will add more information, details, specificities, like our brains. At first, we've got to know that neurons made connections named synapses into the communications we have in our daily lives. Nowadays, we know the different types of cells. We know the different roles of each and every cell, and much more to know. The different types of neurochemistry, etc. So, the more we progress, the more we understand about whom we are as mediums. Today, chapter 73, it's about the Spiritist Alliance. What is it? Fascinating. You see, this book is 90 chapters. As an educator, there is a reason why this chapter comes now and not before. Knowing of the foundation of mediumship, now we need to understand another feature of the practice that depends on this teamwork effort. What is it? Emmanuel is relying upon item 334 of the Medium's book. What is that item? It's in chapter 29 of the Medium's book that talks about Spiritist societies, meetings and societies. In this chapter, Allan Kardec is helping us understand that we need an organized group to make it happen, to study and to practice safely and productively. This item 334 talks about good Spiritist societies, the ones that are reliable. He calls it bona fide societies. Let me read it for us. Item 334 of the Medium's book begins like this. Everything, says Kardec, we have stated about meetings in general naturally applies to regularly constituted societies. Nevertheless, societies must struggle against a few special problems deriving from ties amongst their members. From the numerous requests we have received for information about their composition, we will sum up some of our explanations. Spiritism, which has only recently appeared on the scene, is diversely appreciated and too little understood in its essence by a large number of its followers in order to offer a strong bond amongst its members that could give rise to an association. Such bond could not exist except among those who understand its moral objective and who completely apply themselves to it. No serious element of connection could exist among those who only see it through the more or less curious phenomena. If such phenomena were placed above principles, one simple disagreement on the right way to regard them could cause a schism. The same would not apply to those solely interested in its moral objective. However, because there are no two ways of seeing it, It is also a fact that wherever one finds such individuals, mutual trust always connects them with one another. Reciprocal benevolence is the rule among them and excludes any embarrassment resulting from sensitiveness, pride triggered by the slightest contradiction, and self-centeredness, which demands everything for the person it dwells. In a society in which such sentiments are shared, where the members gather together in order to learn from spirits, and not only in the hope of seeing more or less interesting novelties, or making their own opinions prevail, would not only be viable, but indissoluble as well. Indissoluble. The difficulty involved in bringing several members together in a homogeneous manner leads us to state that in the interest of the studies and for the good of the cause itself, Spiritist Society should aim at creating small groups instead of large associations. These groups corresponding with one another, visiting one another, and exchanging observations could soon form the nucleus of a large Spiritist family that would someday bring together all opinions, uniting men and women in the same sentiment of fraternity, sealed by Christian charity. Wow, this is Allan Kardec in chapter 29, item 339, talking about the core. Let me just read the core elements of a strong Spiritist group, okay? Let's write it down. Mutual trust, reciprocal benevolence, no sensitiveness, and no. Chapter 73 of the Medium's Harvest. Spiritist Alliance. Public meeting on July 10th, 1960, based on item 334 of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec. Emmanuel then wrote through Chico Xavier the following: aligning Spiritist societies to safeguard the purity and the imperative of approximation in the field of ourselves. Certainly, no one can demand that others think differently than they do. Each traveler sees the landscape from the position in which he stands, and every position renews perspectives. In such a way, unity for us does not mean imposing the interpretative resource, but above all, mutual understanding of our needs with the service of an active cooperation based on the respect we owe each other. Thus, let us begin our edification of concord by retiring the blade of criticism. To fustigate the brothers and sisters in struggle, to shred their own souls, is to shred their own souls, exhausting their strength. If someone speaks for the good, even if they are a few sentences a day, extend to this person a spontaneous collaboration to enrich their verb. If they write to edify, even if it is a page a year, encourage the noble effort. If someone consecrates energies in the relief of the sick, although it's only once in a while, encourage their work as well. if they can only give crumbs of themselves in the service of those who suffer, help their first steps in the good works. If they live away from their obligations, pray for them instead of beating them up. If they are in error, support their enlightenment by dignified collaboration, remembering that sour feelings aggravate the distance. You will educate by helping and unite by understanding. Jesus did not call us to perform the role of whips in the universal institution of the gospel, but he categorically affirmed, "My disciples will be known by for much love." And Allan Kardec, explaining on the convenience of the multiplication of Spiritist groups, clearly stated in item 334 of chapter 29 of the Medium's book, that these groups corresponding to each other, visiting one another, exchanging observations, from now can form the nucleus of the great Spiritist family that will one day consort all opinions and bring men together by a single sentiment, that of fraternity, bringing the imprint of Christian charity. Why, of all topics, Emmanuel has also selected this one to be a foundational topic in the Medium's book by Allan Kardec. Why? What would possibly be the reason? There could be many reasons, but he says it right at the beginning. Aligning Spiritist societies to safeguard the purity and simplicity of ourselves, we must consider the imperative of the approximation in the field of ourselves. He's saying, before we compare our center to the others, before we start competing, which shouldn't be done, we need to observe ourselves. No one can demand that others think differently. Each Spiritist center is going to run itself according to their own disposition. And I cannot point fingers. You know, as scientists, we learned that we can only emit an opinion formally when we investigate the phenomena. I cannot just hear a scientist saying, you know, I did an experiment, and if you don't put it in paper form and publish and get peer review, what you're saying doesn't mean anything. We wish that would be the way you proceed in our lives when we hear people saying stuff. Oh, did you know? Did you know? Did you know? I don't care. I shouldn't care if it's not about me. I should care to support, but not to criticize. And when we are talking about the need to be more understanding, Emmanuel, in the book Thought and Life, he tells us in chapter 10 that understanding, he says the following. He says this, only tireless dedication to understanding can guarantee us the necessary balance in the task of our self-improvement. If I don't understand people's boundaries, limitations, etc., I won't be able to improve myself first and be the best that I can helping others either. Because when people come and ask for help, or when I am needed to help others, I have that barrier of my judgmental impulse. Let's not forget that judgmental impulse, it comes with a defense mechanism. We have a lot of needs to defend of ourselves because our ego is still ahead. We still need to make sure that others are not outstanding that much in comparison to us, because we feel we're not good enough, so we need to outstand. And if they do, I always try to find something to make it feel like it's not that bright. Right? People did the same to Jesus. He's the light of our world, and our inner imperfections projected on him in his beautiful transparency, parts of us. And people couldn't see clearly who he was, or who he still is. Still, without the good, that the good is good. No wonder in chapter 10 of the Thought and Life book, Emmanuel tells us, we want to be free from our own ignorance. We must seek the good. But to seek the good, I need first to believe in the good. Question, therapeutic question for us. Do I believe in the good? Why? How am I going to spend time investing in relationships between people in a Spiritist center and a Spiritist society, another Spiritist society, if I don't believe the good? Many people are not understanding, are not united, because they don't really seek the good. They don't believe the good. If somebody comes from another center to visit ours, we're gonna think, I've heard some people say, what are they doing here? We're Spiritists. Why can't I visit your center? But, no, there's no but. There's no territory. There's no dispute. Right? There shouldn't be. If today I decide to take a plane and go to another part of the world, not to give a talk, but just to sit down and participate in a meeting, why can't I do it? Why do I need to have a hidden agenda? Can't it simply be like that? For example, when we go to Brazil, a friend of mine said, but Vanessa, there were friends of mine who were in Brazil with us recently. And in a particular city, we were visiting a Spiritist center, some centers, and listening to talks, receiving the passes, meditating and reflecting. And one of our friends asked, but Vanessa, why can't you go there and give a talk? Shouldn't they ask you to give a talk? And I said, you know, I can come here also to receive. And not only to receive, but to meditate and to observe, to learn. Not only to share in words, but sharing feelings. But sometimes we lose that opportunity because we feel a territorial feeling. There is much of a tribal feeling inside of us. You want to measure it? Therapeutic moment, okay? Teresa Catapano, thank you. I know for some reason the internet. Hope we can go on. But let us measure this if we're still very tribal. To be tribal, in sociology we call it ethnocentric. To be that we are placing our culture as more important, more efficient, better than others. And that serves the purpose of a... If I think that the Spiritist center I belong to is better than others, more efficient, more is different. Different, no doubt. Each center is each center. But better to the point that I don't acknowledge the beauty of other centers, the structure, the dynamics, the works. I am ethnocentric. I am being tribal. My tribe versus your tribe. You see, we're still that, and in great need of ridding ourselves of that ethnocentricity. David Hoops, a sociologist in the 1950s and 60s, he designed a pathway of intercultural learning that can help us as well as a Spiritist and promote this alliance that Kardec's mentioned. Hold on a second. Okay, hopefully it's gonna stay put. So friends, David Hoops did an pathway for intercultural learning, so we can be less ethnocentric, less tribal, more multicultural. How can I do it as a Spiritist? I need to go to the core of the teachings. What is it? The Christ consciousness. Emmanuel tells us the foundation of it all is Jesus' affirmation. My disciples will be known for much loving one another. And he didn't say those in your center, not other centers. Everybody's trying to do the best they can. So he says the number one thing is the Christ consciousness. Spiritism is the promised consoler. How can I practice mediumship? Feeling that we are a tribe and other centers are other tribes. Kardec never behaved this way, so much so that many articles in the Spiritist magazine are a result of the publications of mediumistic communications that happen in other centers. Much of what we have in Kardec's foundational books are also his research that came from other groups, through other mediums, and confirmed what he was getting there. This is the Spiritist Alliance. And we can only proceed in that way if I use my reasoning, my discernment, which we often don't use. We're still like, if Divaldo Franco says, I believe. If it's some other medium, I'm not so sure. But do you know that medium? No, Vanessa, I don't. But they are not as famous as Divaldo. I don't think fame is a reason why we would believe in somebody. Because there are many people who are famous and not necessarily dignified or reliable. I'm not saying Divaldo Franco. not even mediums, we're talking about people in general. There are many celebrities that people know as famous, not necessarily. I will believe in what they say because they're famous. Because Divaldo Franco, his role is to go to the world and speak. But there are mediums who need to stay where they are, helping their communities. And I'll give an example. Mediums like Alzira Bessa Amui, who is the great grandniece of Professor Ips Barçanufo, and is a wonderful medium, a wonderful educator, and the head of the school and the continuator of Professor Ips Barçanufo legacy in education. And many people misinterpret her and the works because they have to stay in the city. They have a school with hundreds of kids. Their mission is not to travel the world telling people how to do it. They need to stay put, like Professor Ips Barçanufo. His mission in that life was pre-internet, pre-TV, pre-many mass means of communication. But no doubt, as Chico Xavier said, he was the most complete medium that came to the Spiritist movement to date. We don't measure the reliability of a medium by the recognition that he receives from people. We measure it by the works that are being done. The tree is measured by the fruits. Have I seen it? Have I been there and researched on it? I cannot say it. People are saying it, but is that really? So we really need to keep that in mind. Keep in mind, the tree is measured by the fruit. Look what the person does to the general good, and we can ponder. Here, the blade of criticism, says Emmanuel, let us begin our edification of concord by doing what? Retiring, putting it aside, the blade of criticism. People have this ancient habit, they came in the church mostly, but you know, the Pharisees at Jesus' time were good at it. They were sharp. To just read Paul and Stephen and you see how sarcastic, ironic, their criticism was sour. And there are many of us who reincarnated from those experiences and now in the Spiritist movement, we just feel like multiplying slanders out of nothing better to be done. Too much time at hand. Babysit a child and you see there's no more time to criticize anyone. Literally, right? Cece is saying, is it okay for one person to be part of a mediumistic reading in 2 different centers? No. No. You can't. You shouldn't. Thank you for asking, Cece. We shouldn't because Kardec mentions it, André Luiz in the book This Obsession mentions it. We shouldn't participate in 2 meetings in different centers. Okay? Why? For several reasons. One of the reasons being that I'll give you an explanation by giving you an analogy. A mediumistic meeting is like a surgical team. If you talk to doctors who are surgeons, they have usually their team to operate. Of course, exceptions happen, but usually they have their team to operate well. They usually even choose the people that belong to their surgical team to operate well. Because it's about affinity. It's about this feeling that Kardec says, homogeneity. And it's rarely that we're going to be able to display that into different groups. And we're going to start comparing, saying the classic, but that group is studying this book. And now we start disturbing the other group. No, we can't. We can't go there. Each group needs something. So we can't do both. We shouldn't. We shouldn't. Right? But hopefully this will be a topic that will unfold before the book ends at some point. Thank you, César. So, no criticism. Then, what should we do instead? Encourage. He says, cases. Somebody who speaks good things but does, come on, that person could do more. What do? Help that person. Maybe they will be encouraged if you help them. Some people write good things, but not much, just a page a year. Like, oh, that person has such a talent. Encourage them to do it. And it's so funny, because in the Spiritist Center, being the president of a Spiritist Center, for almost 2 decades, I tell you this, it's interesting because people come, the Spirit see the potential, we see the potential, and we say, look, try this, help this. And they say, what could I do? And we say, try this one. And many people doubt. They doubt that they're capable. They doubt that we're doing this for them. It's not for us. It's not a job. If somebody helps at Kardec Radio or not, at the Spiritist Magazine or not, at the Spiritist side of Virginia or not, at the Spiritist group in New York, of DC or not, it's not for me that they're doing. It's for themselves, but it's on us to share the works of this beautiful harvest for our collective growth. So there's no personal interest. There shouldn't be. But sometimes the people doubt why they were given a task. Let's not forget, Emmanuel has already said it. When you're given a task, God is giving you that task. Through somebody. But it's God. Calling us up. Trusting in us. We need to trust ourselves. He says, if somebody just helps in the outreach efforts, helping the homeless, for example, just once in a while, well, what do? Encourage them, help their efforts so they feel the good. What if people don't do anything? Pray instead of criticizing. Saying, oh, we need to pray more for that person. I hope somebody prays for me if they don't see me doing the good work. Saying, oh, Vanessa didn't come. Why? Something must be happening. Let's pray for her. Please do. If the person is making a mistake, usually it's like lepra. People are like, oh my God. It's like the flu nowadays. Like, oh my gosh, that person has the flu. Run away. Everybody running away from the person. But the Christ consciousness says, Emmanuel says, if the person is making a mistake, support their enlightenment. Help them. Remember that sour feelings aggravate the distance. We can't. We need to stay close. And sometimes not saying anything, but being there and saying, we trust in you. how can I dare not to trust everybody's a child of God? And then he says, we don't educate by saying stuff, but by helping people. We unite by understanding. There is this big thing in the Spiritist movement talking about unity, unity, unity. I love unity too. I love working with people. But we don't unite by putting uniforms. That's what Emmanuel is saying. We cannot demand that people think like us. But everybody needs to pay $1,000 to belong to a universal Spiritist organization. I'm sorry, but I don't agree. We should pay to be a member. We need to respect. And not say, you see, that person doesn't want to be united. That person wants to be isolated. If we are really in the uniting efforts, we'll go after that person and ask that person what's going on. And we'll say, I don't have $1,000 to pay. Okay, you're still going to be a member. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, but you have to pay. Why? Imposing. That's not unity. That's an imposition. Leigh is saying, for those who have Apple device, recommend upload the version. Exactly. I agree, Leigh. I did this today, and I believe you're right. Thank you. A new version, 11.2.5. So, Emmanuel says, we unite by understanding. What is understanding? Thought in Life, chapter 10. It says, all of us receive inspiration for the future from our celestial Father, and all of us suffer the repercussions of the past upon our lives. No Spiritist group, Spiritist society, Spiritist center, Spiritist federation, Spiritist association, Spiritist anything receives more inspiration than the others. All of us. Kardec acknowledged it and never thought that his center in Paris was better than the center in Lyon, in Bordeaux, in Rouen, in the United States of America at the time, and in other places. Kardec, he never doubted, though they didn't know the teachings that he was finding out. Who are we to believe that only the good ones are going to show up in our center and not in other centers? Who are we to dismiss the precious connections that we all have with the higher spirits and with God? God is not more in a Spiritist center because somebody belongs to the International Spiritist Council or to the United States Spiritist Federation. I'm sorry to say this, but the good spirits are everywhere. And they are not more in Brazil, in the Brazilian Spiritist Federation, than in the Casa do Inácio at John of God. They are everywhere. And you know where the good spirits are? Where people need the most. And usually, the hypocrisy and the Pharisees don't need the good spirits because they already think they are good. Where people are suffering, that's where they are going to be. That's what happened to James. James, one of Jesus' disciples, says, Brother X, after Jesus was crucified, James longed for Jesus. Who didn't and who doesn't? He longed for Jesus. And he decided to fast and to meditate. So he climbed a mountain and spent in a cabin 40 days fasting and meditating and praying, hoping that Jesus would show up. And after 40 days, Jesus did show up. They had a meal together. Don't ask me how it happened, I don't know. But that's Brother X. They had a meal together. And when they were done, James looked at Jesus and Jesus was already leaving. And James is like, Master, I thought you're going to stay. He smiles at James and says, James, if you want to be with me, come to those in the valley of suffering. And he left. And James was like, what? So then James climbed down the ego, the mountain of his ego, thinking that he was above, and descended to the valley of suffering. And there he found Jesus. Jesus is not in a bureaucratic meeting of spiritists somewhere in the world, discussing about if people should say cardicism or spiritism. Jesus is not there. Jesus doesn't care if we call it cardicism or spiritism. Jesus doesn't care if we pray seated or standing. Jesus doesn't care if we read the Spirit's book first or the Genesis first. Jesus doesn't care if we read all the books every year or none of the books. Jesus cares about us, our essence. The Christ consciousness is about heart. The Christ consciousness is about the virtuous being that we are, the divine, the light that shines in us. That is what matters. What matters is not discussing charity, but doing charity. I'll never forget when we were in Atlanta, in a Spiritist symposium. There was a talk about charity, and during our break time, we met this homeless. It's a beautiful story, to cut it short. He was asking us what we were doing, and I said, why don't you come inside? So we paid him a ticket and he came inside. Coincidentally or not, it was my turn to give a talk. And I felt, wow, mind-blowing, the fact that we were there united to talk about charity, whereas people who really needed the movement of charity were outside. Does it mean that the symposium is to no use? No. It is important. Like this year, we come together in Washington, D.C. on April 21st to learn together, to know each other, but mostly to empower ourselves to practice even more and reach out much more than we have been doing. The more we learn, the more we become responsible. So we hope that you join us on this April 21st in the Spiritist Symposium in Washington, D.C. because it's a moment in which we'll pray together for the planet and in the very capital of the United States. It's the first big, large meeting of a movement, a national movement in the United States, in the capital of the United States. So it's not only historical, but it's very, very important. very important that we make an effort to join in, friends. We're saying this, no personal agenda from me, because the event is not mine, it's of God. But it's an opportunity for us to practice this Spiritist Alliance in action, understanding, helping, reaching out. Okay? So, tomorrow when we come back, we'll come back to talk about knowledge. But I won't say it before I say hi. I want to say hi. It's important. We keep this feeling of life, of being together. If you're watching on demand, a kiss and a hug on you. Lisa Teles, I'm glad you're going to be here in the symposium on the April 21st. Andrea Torres is here. Thank you. Lu Nicoliello, thank you for your loving dedication. Patricia Giri, how are you, my friend? Ceisa, thank you, Ceisa, for helping us. Elisa, Geisa Rodrigues, how are you? Teresa Catapano, I hope you have been able to watch today. Katia, how are you? Ebiche, Aidan Cáceres, how are you? Karina Lisi. By the way, can you believe, Karina, the mom's brain? Oh my. Happy birthday to you, Karina. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Karina. We all love you. And if you don't know Karina, you better know now. She is your sister for eternity. A kiss to you, Karina. Many more years in this reincarnation for you. Luciana Antoni, big hug. Paula, how are you? Larissa, how are you, Larissa? Nora Brazil, big hug to you, Nora. Rihanna and Nico, big hug. John De Rosa, how are you? Adriana Sanchez Monteiro, a big hug to you. And Elizabeth Sena. Raquel Bakesh, what a joy, Raquel. Adilson, thank you, Adilson. Sunshine, how are you? Nina Dewey, how are you? Nina Teresa Castro, how are you? Lívia Moraes, Leia Severo, and our friend. Yes, what a joy, huh? That our dear Karina, right, Rudy? We are a beautiful community, international. It's good to feel that, as the mentors were saying, it's not by chance that we are united for more than a year. More than a year. Every day. Because the good spirits count on this connection, on this current of good thoughts, to do what they need to do. We counterbalance, not us, they. We're part of it. It's God, it's not us. So, talking about this alliance, tomorrow, chapter 74, Emmanuel titles it, They Know. What do they know? I don't know. But, teaser, huh? Before the brother that has fallen in remorse and rebelliousness, sourness and desperation, do not beat up their wounds. If you effectively want to readjust that person, allow that your love touch the chords of their heart. I'm telling you, it's about feeling. It's about love. It's about feeling this love. You can feel it, and I do too. Do you believe in the good? Because to unite ourselves to the good, we need first to believe in the good. Do you believe in the good? Right, sunshine? I'm glad you're going to be here, and let us celebrate the beauty of the good that exists in us and around. Do you believe in it? Come back tomorrow and let's talk about how to stream the chords of each other's hearts. Thank you, friends.